Afternoon. I appreciate everybody being here. Roll call, please.
Mayor Luis Trujillo,
Present.
Councilor David Romero,
Here.
Councilor Michael Montoya,
Present.
Councilor David Ulibarri Jr.
Here.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We do have a quorum.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with justice for all. I'd like to just lead a moment of reflection on all the first responders, healthcare workers, at this very time, all the truck drivers who bring food into our community, all the workers at grocery stores, for keeping us stocked and fed, and during this COVID-19 pandemic, the hospital workers, the people who are doing all the tests in the community. I'd like to just thank everybody for all their hard work. I'd like to thank the employees of the City of Las Vegas also for working so hard and serving our public. I ask that we continue to do good work, to be responsive to our phone calls, emails, to citizens' concerns as promptly as possible. And again, I'm grateful for everyone being here today. Thank you. And I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
Mr. Mayor, I just had one question if I could ask legal.
Sure.
Would you recommend that for the hire of finance manager that we have executive, or unless?
Is it a discussion regarding that, filling that position?
Yeah, if there's any questions, if not, I guess we just leave it as is.
If there are questions, you best do it executive.
What's the pleasure of the council?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Make a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
Thank you. There's a motion by Mr. Romero,
Second.
second by Mr. Ulibarri. Roll call, please.
Councilor Montoya,
Yes.
Councilor Ulibarri Jr.
Yes.
Councilor Romero.
Yes.
I have a motion by Councilor Romero, a second by Councilor Ulibarri Jr. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, next item on the agenda is public input. I have no public input for today. So the next item is business items. Item 1 is approval, disapproval to appoint Jesus Vaquera as finance director. And we have our city manager, Bill here.
Hello, Bill. Welcome.
Good afternoon, councilors and Mr. Mayor. As you know, the charter says that I should appoint directors, but with your approval. And so I'm here to present Jesus Vaquera. Jesus is a fairly accomplished governmental accountant. He was the controller at Highlands University for about 9 years. He was associate deputy controller for 2 years before that, and has had many years of experience in governmental accounting. And then he's currently employed in the private sector, working for Franken Industries, and so I have every confidence in his abilities, and I'm glad to present him for your consideration.
Thank you, Mr. City Manager. Anybody have any questions, comments, concerns?
Mr. Mayor?
Mr. Mayor?
I just had one question, and I don't know if I could ask the applicant, if I can I ask him a question?
Sure. Mr. Vaquera?
Yes, sir.
Hello, Mr. Vaquero?
Vaquera.
I just have one question. As a governing body, one of our responsibilities is to ensure, the finance and the fiscal responsibility of the city, and, and you play an important role in this position. And I just, one question that I have is, could you kind of give us your experience as far as procurement? I'm a big, make sure that we follow procurement. I just kind of want some history on that.
I know the basics on procurement. You need your 3 quotes and follow the rules, and don't buy sole proprietorships without actually doing the research that it is a sole proprietor.
Mr. Romero, that is one of the things that he will be required to do by the municipal league. He will have to go through a course and get certified as somebody who completely understands the procurement code.
And the reason why I bring that up is you're well aware, audits of the past have brought up, issues like that, and I just want to make sure that you're aware of that when you're taking that position.
Okay?
I have a question, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Montoya?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, Mr. City Manager, was there a process for this, or this is just your recommendation, or did you put it out for advertisement, or what was the process?
We put it out for advertisement. We had it open not only to people internally, but to the outside world. We advertised in the municipal league. We advertised with the local newspapers, and we advertised on our webpage. And so Mr. Vaquera was the candidate we chose.
And Mr. City Manager, that was the only choice, or were there other candidates?
That at the time, unless some came in after we made the choice, which I don't think did, Mr. Vaquera was our only candidate.
Okay. I did have a question for Mr. Baquera. On your resume, you did indicate all the different positions that you've held since 1991 or so. And my only question is, why so many positions? Were they just like jumping from one to the other at Highlands, or
No,
it was better
jumping up the
opportunity?
ladder at Highlands.
Yeah, okay. So it was for betterment of your career?
Yes.
Okay. And how long have you been here at Franklin's? Because it doesn't indicate it on your resume.
Franken's 4 years tomorrow.
4 years. Okay. And what brings you to the city of Las Vegas? If I may ask, Mr. Mayor.
I need a job here in Vegas because the wife works here, so I don't want to travel anymore further than Vegas, so that was the major concern right there.
I have no other questions, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Montoya.
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Uribarri?
Mr. Vaqueras, I did talk to some of your colleagues that work with you at Highlands, and they really talk really good about what you do and the work you do out there. And real close friends of mine that Dr. Tony Gallegos and some other people that I talked to, and
Okay.
and they really talk really good about what you do. So thank you for putting up your application here.
You're welcome.
Yes, sir, one last comment. Mr. Vaquera, I know, as you sit in this position, the mayor will ask you at every meeting, he'll ask you, any major concerns. I just want you to, to be open. I know that there's probably been city managers in the past that have, things have been going on and haven't been upfront with the council, and I think it's important that, whatever you feel that you need is of a concern, to make sure that this council is aware of, and I think that's an important thing for us to know as you start this position, is that please don't hide anything from us, because it's, we are the ones that are actually held responsible for whatever happens financially.
Yes, sir.
Let you know that. That's it, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I know that the budget is budgeted for $79,997. What would his salary be at? I didn't see it on here.
I think that the discussion that I had with Mr. Vaquera was, I don't remember the exact amount, but it was something like, I remember 78, I think, was 78,000.
Any other questions? Mr. Vaquera, thank you so much for your interest in working for the city of Las Vegas.
Thank you.
I appreciate that very much. What's the pleasure of the council?
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Uribarri?
to approve and appoint Jesus Vaqueras as the finance director.
We have a motion on the floor by Mr. Uribarri. I'll entertain a second. I'll entertain a second.
Second.
Second by Mr. Romero. Roll call, please.
Councilor Montoya?
Yes.
Councilor Uribarri Jr.?
Yes.
Councilor Romero?
Yes.
I have a motion by Councilor Uribarri Jr., a second by Councilor Romero. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Motion carried.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, next item on the agenda is approval, disapproval of Resolution 20-47 to approve the final fiscal year 2019-2020 DFA financial report for submission to DFA Local Government Division. And we have our Deputy Finance Director, Dominic Chavez, to present.
Good afternoon, Mayor and members of council.
Good afternoon. I'd like to start off with a comment, Dominic.
Yes, sir.
I know that you have put in a lot of time and effort and a lot of work into producing the budget, not only that, but all the corresponding documents that go to DFA.
Yes, sir.
And I just want to recognize you for your hard work and your staff as well. You deserve to be recognized, and it's not an easy task, and you did it. And thank you so much.
Very much appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir. So we are here to receive approval, disapproval of Resolution 2047 to approve the final quarter for submission to DFA. I apologize for the late submission to you all. It's been, as you mentioned, a lot of work. So I got that into you late this afternoon. But if you have any questions on it, I'd be more than happy to provide any discussion that we could possibly do. We did not change much from our final, from the July meeting that took place. Our expenditures and our revenues are falling right in place as we expected. Less than what we had anticipated, our expenditures, so that's a good thing. Our gross receipts tax did come in a little bit higher for June than what we anticipated, a little bit higher than last year, so by about 47,000 higher than last year. So we still haven't felt any real impact in that sense as of yet.
Well, that's good. That's good news. I understand that our budget's in better shape than we thought it would be.
Yes, sir.
And hopefully that trend continues and we're not so impacted by 2021 fiscal, you know.
Right.
That's our goal. I'm open to any discussion. Mr. Mayor?
If we can, Dominic or Dr. Taylor, could you kind of give us a brief summary as to, I know, we did have to kind of cut down a little bit. Could you kind of summarize as to where we made those cuts?
Yeah,
Or how did we absorb, I guess?
I'll be glad to talk about that for when we talk about the budget.
Okay.
I think that one of the reasons why we ended up with in a little bit better position than we might have is that we were very cautious on spending at the end of the year. So I came in April, so April, May, June. Those 3 months, we were very cautious on spending because of our concern about what might happen with COVID. We kept some positions, we didn't fill some positions until we got a better picture of where things were. And the revenues came in better than we expected, in part because of the way the accounting's done. So that June revenue reflects money that was received by the state 2 months prior, which was just when COVID was starting to hit. So we still were trying to make next year's budget, not knowing what's going to happen when we actually see an impact from COVID. The other thing is that the impact from COVID was greatly muted by all the things that the federal government did to provide people with income. And so people got the $1,200 check. We had the extended and higher unemployment insurance, where they got the insurance at a much higher amount, and they got $600 extra a week. That was a tremendous amount, and we saw people spending it. And that's a trend across the country. And so that, and we saw them spending it in different places. Of course, you couldn't go to bars and spend money there, but people were spending a lot in places like our hardware stores. And if you've gone to the hardware stores recently, you know that it's hard to find certain kinds of products. They're out. We've had problems here at the city getting sprinkler heads because there were none. So a lot of businesses were greatly harmed by this virus and up to this point, and there were some that benefited from it. So the impact has been very uneven. But overall, we ended up with revenues that were greater than we expected, and we didn't spend as much money as was budgeted. And that's why we ended up with a year as you'll see when we talk about the budget, we ended up the year in a good starting position for this coming year.
That's good to hear. Well, thank you for all your work too, Dr. Taylor, and with the budget and helping with your finance experience as well.
And let me say, when we start to talk about the budget, a lot of this work was done by Mary Romero, who wasn't here, or isn't here now. And she left for a better opportunity someplace, but she worked so diligently and so hard. With Dominic staying late, even after she resigned, she was coming in, I think even last weekend, to come and help us get this budget, final budget done. So I really want to recognize her efforts, going well
Absolutely.
above and beyond, what was required of her. And so I think that, as you'll see when we go through things, I think that they reflect a lot of her hard work to do the kinds of things that you instructed us to do. As let's try to come in with a balanced budget, do the best as you can to keep us in a good financial position. And I think you'll see as we go through this, we're in a very good financial position compared to other cities in the state and really across the country.
It's really good to hear. Awesome to hear. Any other discussion?
On that, I don't know, Mr. Mayor.
I'm sorry?
On that, I don't know. I'm sorry for
Oh, okay.
I'll wait till the
the budget.
Okay, what's the pleasure of the council?
well, I thought he was going to go through it.
Oh, I thought you were going to,
If you'd like
Yeah.
to, we can discuss whatever you want to
Yes.
discuss.
I thought we needed to approve this resolution first.
Yeah, we do have to approve it, but I might just, I thought you were going to go through
Mr.
it.
Mayor?
Yeah,
If
just-
you'd like to discuss any of these
Yeah.
funds or any of these expenditures, yes, sir.
Mr. Mayor?
I'm happy to
Okay.
answer any questions.
Yes, go
I
ahead.
make a motion to approve Resolution 20-47.
Second,
Second by Mr. Ulibarri. Roll call, please.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
I have questions.
I thought we were going to discuss the budget with the next order of business.
Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we'll do it, so,
Okay, thanks.
my bad.
It's okay.
Councilor Romero?
Yes.
Councilor Montoya?
Yes.
Councilor Ulibarri Jr.?
Yes.
I have a motion by Councilor Romero, a second by Councilor Ulibarri Jr. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Motion carries.
Thank you so much.
Next item on the agenda is approval, disapproval of Resolution 20-46 to adopt the final fiscal year 2020-2021 budget for submission to DFA Local Government Division. Mr. Chavez?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, members of council, we are here to request approval, disapproval, Resolution 20-46 to adopt the final 2021 budget for submission to DFA Local Government Division. And with that, any questions that you may have, we can be more than happy to.
Okay, I'll open the floor for discussion.
Mr. Mayor, maybe
Yes.
I handed out some brief summary of some of the things that I thought that might be interesting to you as I went through this budget. For the last 3 days, I went line by line comparing it to last year's budget, and some things jumped out at me, and I highlighted them in this report. So the first thing is that if you just look at the very first page on the very first line on the recap section of the budget, you'll see that if you look at our budgeted revenues and our budgeted transfers, it's 11.4 million, and budgeted expenditures are 11.3 million. Basically, that's a balanced budget. And how did we get there? Well, expenditures were actually $1 million less than was budgeted last year, but that's a little bit misleading because that was what was budgeted last year. We didn't spend as much as was budgeted last year. What we budgeted so far, what we budgeted this year was what we actually spent last year, more or less. So we have a balanced budget to start the year, and of course this is a plan, and how we execute it is going to be very important, but we are going to have a lot of help with that as we go through the years. If we see that revenues are weaker than we anticipated, or we can slow down spending, and that's why we have a finance director and a deputy finance director to closely monitor those things and keep me informed about that. The other thing is that we don't know still is whether the feds are going to come in with some support. And, there's been some discussion. I've been in meetings with the Municipal League, with Senator Udall and other leaders in the Congress, and they're saying that they're still working on this to try to get some assistance to cities because, when you look at what we budgeted in terms of revenues, it's about $1 million less than we got last year. So if we could get some help with that, that would be a very important thing that would help us get through things and would help us take care of some unmet needs. Because while this is a balanced budget, we're trying to make things fit. And so, there are certain things that we'd like to do that we haven't been able to do.
Good.
So the next thing is, the second bullet is our estimated ending cash balance is 3.8 million. That's what we're showing for what we expect to end up next year. We started with 3.1 million, so we're actually going to have higher balances. And you add that balance to the amount that we're required by DFA, which is $900-some thousand to keep also keeping set aside, that gives us basically 4 months of expenditures, 4 or 5 months of expenditures that we could cover if our revenues were down drastically, but we won't get there. It would be catastrophic if we actually got there. So we actually are looking very good there. We think that we budgeted the revenues in a very responsible way. I had mentioned before that the new state budget reduced its gross receipts tax spending by estimate by 21%. We reduced ours by 15%, not as much as the state, but that's because the state gets a lot of gross receipts taxes on the spending of capital equipment, especially oil and gas equipment, and that's going away. That's not something that affects us. What affects us is consumer spending, and the drop-off that's expected in consumer spending, or the drop-off expected in wages and salaries, is between 8 and 16%. So, this is a guess, but our best guess is that spending might drop off by as much as 15%. In some places in the state, especially those that have been that are highly dependent on tourism, they've seen drop-offs as much as 40%. We don't think that we're going to see that here, but we did 15%. If the money comes in better than that, we can make adjustments later. But we thought it would be better to be cautious than too optimistic. The budgeted expenditures, as I said before, we reduced budgeted expenditures by about $1 million less than what was budgeted last year, but actually what our budgeted expenditures are this year are pretty much what we spent last year. And there's actually a little bit of cushion there, because that budget, as you go through it, you'll see that there are a number of positions that are budgeted, and we've set the money aside for them, but they're not filled. So in the state, we call that vacancy savings. And so we've already a month through the year, so we've got a month savings on a lot of those positions. And even if we go out and try to fill them all, and then immediately we're going to get, it'll take at least a month to go and hire people, and that's not going to happen. So we've got a little bit of cushion on our spending side as well. This is a thing that we, if revenues do improve, I think that, and we're allowed to, we need to look at what we're paying our workers. I mean, in many cases, we're paying people a little more than the minimum wage. We've had discussions with the unions. They've been very understanding that we're in a very difficult situation as a state, and we don't know what we're actually going to have, and so we put aside any raises that we were also prohibited by DFA to implement any changes in wages. Then this last set of bullets are just some things that I thought maybe might have jumped out at people as they looked at this. And one is, as you saw, if you looked at the mayor's budget, you probably saw that it looked like a fairly large increase. And that all I did was transfer a position that was under the city manager for the PIO to be under the mayor, and we changed the nature of that position from a PIO to kind of a community liaison, which will include some public information work, but include also a major responsibility for working with our volunteer organizations and serving as a liaison. It's already been tremendous help to me, because I get a lot of calls that this person is able to help with, and she's very good at it. She's much more patient than I am.
Yeah.
And let's see.
And also to note that you didn't hire an administrative assistant for me.
We didn't hire an administrative assistant for you. So actually, as we go through all of these, and one of the reasons I want to go through them is if you just looked at them item by item, it looks like, boy, there's a large increase here, but they're offset by decreases elsewhere. So In this case, this was somebody that was already working for the city. We transferred her over to this position. We did not fill that other position. We have no intention of filling that position, so there's no cost, no additional cost to the city. The human resources budget is also one that looks like there was a large increase, but that was because we had the HR director position empty for a long time, and then we had a position that was only partially filled, and so we changed that. So really not a very big real change. The finance position, these are all positions because it looks like, I want to go over them because it looks like our central administration has been, we're increasing the spending on that. And again, what we've done here is the only difference is that we had put an administrative assistant in that department that didn't have an administrative assistant, again at no cost, because this was a person that was already working for the city and the position has not been replaced elsewhere. And then the rec center is a big thing, and it's a big item because the rec center is operating on a shoestring because it's only, none of the programs are open. The only thing that you can go do there is go lift weights and do those kinds of things. And so we greatly reduced the spending there, and we transferred a lot of those workers to the Parks Department. And those are the guys that you see out there, and I think people complimented the Parks Department because they've done a lot of work. It's with the help of the people there. So we went from like 3 full-time workers at Parks to about 8. Again, did we hire more people? No, we just transferred them from one place to the other. And so where they could be more useful. And of course, that flexibility will stay there because it's now a combined department. And so the Parks and Recreation Department, we will be able to move people around as we need to once that center reopens, once the community center opens. So. The general services budget, I just wanted to point out that we saw a fairly significant reduction there, 136,000. Part of that was that we're not having fireworks this year, and so it's July 4th. This budget was supposed to be as of July 1st, so there was no fireworks on July 4th, and so we didn't spend there. And then the summer youth programs that we were not being allowed to have were also not happening, so that was savings there. So if you combine the Parks and Recreation budgets together, I actually see a reduction between the two of them. One looks like there's a large increase in the parks, other a large decrease in the community, in the recreation center. But together, it's a pretty flat budget. A little bit, it's actually down by some amount. The streets budget was pretty flat, but if you look at the line items, if you go through this line by line, you'll see that there's a large increase in spending for vehicles. And this actually reflects that there was, in last year's budget, there was money set aside for a bucket truck. That bucket truck, we received word that it was available for pickup in something like May, or end of May, but then we got word from the Municipal League that it would not be insured. Picking it up wouldn't be insured. They said you could not pick it up until July. And so we had to transfer the spending that would have happened in this year to next year. So it just, but if actually, once if this budget is approved, our guys are ready to go pick it up tomorrow. They'll go pick it up and they'll probably wait until next week because they're going to get some training. We're going to send everybody down there to get training on how to use the bucket truck.
Perfect.
Then this is the Capital Improvement Fund, which is Fund 220. If you look at that, in the line says equipment, we have $210,000, which we set aside for the pothole machine that you all had requested of the legislature last time, which was funded and then vetoed by the governor as the state's fiscal position deteriorated. We put that money aside, assuming that that was still a priority, and based on what we hear from you and from our constituents about the potholes, we're doing the best we can, I think, with a machine like this and a dedicated person, that we can go a long ways in meeting that problem. And then lastly, a thing that I didn't put on there, but I should have, is I didn't say anything about the lodger's tax budget. And the lodger's tax budget shows a huge reduction in revenues. And of course, we don't really know what's going to happen, but there was a time where they were saying that hotels and motels couldn't have more than 25% occupancy. which would put an upper end of 25% on revenues. And so we didn't want to put 0, so we put 25%. A good recovery might mean that there's extra money there, but that money is only used for the things that lodger's tax is allowed to be spent on. We did reduce spending a little bit on, we had somebody who was an FTE that was funded by lodger's tax to work over at the Welcome Center. We eliminated that position, and it cost us about $40-some thousand, and we replaced it with a $20,000 contract to the Chamber of Commerce, and they will have somebody there working with volunteers to make sure that there is somebody there to welcome our people. So I think we're going to get more for half the amount of money. So that's
Good to hear.
Those are the things that I wanted to highlight, and there's probably other questions that you have, but
Thank you, Bill. Appreciate all the work. Mr. Estrada?
Yeah, I was just curious as to what effective cost savings did that canceling of the 4th of July and the bike rally do, also including like overtime from the police department? As I know, $175,000 were budgeted for overtime this last year, I think it was, for the PD. Was that really all that savings, or?
no, we didn't really, I think that, and I wish Ms. Romero was here, because if you look through these budgets, she reduced a lot of spending, not so much on FTE, but on non-FTE spending, to reflect what was actually being spent. And so, she saw that, and I remember we had some discussions about overtime, and she would say, we budgeted this much overtime, but they're only using, they haven't been using that much. We can trim that. But I don't remember what we actually did in terms of the police department.
Okay. And also, I guess we've been out without a building inspector for some time now. Is that, is there funding appropriated for that in this budget?
Yeah,
Because I feel we're losing a lot of money.
That's a really good question. In fact, I had a discussion with Mr. Hendrickson about that just a little bit ago today, and I also talked to the county manager about it. The position is funded, and we're trying to see if the county could not come in and share that cost with us, just like we do the OEM officer. And and I talked to Vidal. He said, I'm open to discussion, but I don't know what that means yet. But we do have the position funded.
And one more question, Mr.
Yes,
Mayor. On the funding that we're going to be paying HUD, is that all included there, or we're going to be looking for monies down the road?
And we budgeted that.
We budgeted
We
all?
budgeted $365,000, I think, for that.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Montoya. Mr. Romero?
I just had a couple of small questions. I had a couple of veterans ask me, and I looked here on the budget, and there's the Veterans Memorial Fund, but I guess there used to be a time for like Veterans Day and Memorial Day, when we do presentations, that we would fund like pins and stuff, and I guess that we stopped that in a couple of years. So just wondering, is that where that money would be coming from?
Yes, sir, actually, and that's a good question, because Mary asked that question about a month ago, and she was just wondering exactly what that was, so we researched that, and that's exactly what it would come from.
Okay, so that will be available?
Yeah.
Okay.
But Councilor Romero, that takes me to a bigger point. I mean, we worked really hard to get this budget done in time with the format that has been used forever and ever. I don't think it's a very good format. It shows you what our budgets have been for the last years, but it doesn't show you what the actual spending has been. Furthermore, and probably just as important, there is not a single word of narrative in this document.
Yeah, it's just a bunch of
We need to
numbers.
have a narrative where we explain to you and the public what we're doing in each of these funds. There's certain funds in here, and I'm asking the same question you just asked. What's this money for?
Yeah.
And so next year, you're going to see a much improved format for the budget, in the sense that it will provide better information that's more understandable for the public and for you and for me.
That's great. That's good news. That's awesome news.
Yeah, it's a difficult thing to just run through and you see numbers, but you don't have.
And then if you kind of see
it,
it, some of them they reflect the same balances from last year to this year, so it's like we have the money, but we're not.
Yeah, we're not spending it. And it's like, why? What's this money for? Why haven't we spent it?
And that goes to my second question, the abatement fund. And I know that there's been some properties that I think we've all kind of been interested into doing that, and I'm just wondering, is that going to be sufficient to take care of those properties, or?
Well, I don't know if it'll be sufficient or not, but I think it starts off with $40,000 or so in that fund.
50,000?
$50,000. We already have a property on Francisco Street that we're going to be boarding up. It was occupied by the homeless. It's got tremendous issues with code enforcement issues, trash that's just been piling up for a long time. We're starting on that right away. And it's not, as you know, we've got a lot of those kind of buildings. And so, is there going to be enough money? I don't know, but we can do, if revenues come in better than we think, or we can transfer money from one place to the others as we see necessary. I think there's another fund, an economic development fund, I don't know if that's what it's called, but it has some money that Mr. Hendrickson was remembering when he was when he was head of the Economic Development Corporation, that money had been set aside from the sale of some properties, $450,000, and he would ask Mary Romero, where is it? And she'd say, I don't know. But then she researched it and finally found it. It's there, it's in a fund. And we've got a couple other properties over at DeVip that we're looking at possibly selling that we could then use to improve the infrastructure, because there's some, you're going to have an industrial park, the roads have to be of a certain quality and those kind of things. So that's, what the question you raise is true not only for that abatement fund, but for some of these other funds.
Yeah, right now, the Economic Development Fund has $200,000 budgeted, but as Dr. Taylor mentioned, we do have that other source from that sale previous, that's in the cash
Good.
on this.
And if the public is wondering what we're talking about, abatement and so forth, I guess it's just fair to let the public know that we're moving forward with cleaning up vacant properties and vacant properties that are public nuisance, where a lot of bad things could happen if these buildings still exist. So we're moving forward very rapidly on this. We intend to make a big dent in managing vacant properties and so forth, and that's going to be in our August meeting as well. Scott has worked on a vacant building ordinance where now people are going to have to register their vacant buildings. So we're moving forward, and as those funds generate, we'll be able to do more abatement of properties throughout town.
Mr. Mayor?
Mr. Ulibarri?
Mr. Taylor, on the street budget, you said at Spring Flat, and you had a large increase of spending on the vehicles. How much did you're talking about the bucket truck, and
Yeah.
And do we spend much more money on vehicles for our directors, or for our streets, or for, because you're talking about the street, budget. The streets need a lot of improvement. And the thing is that if we're spending a lot of money on vehicles or whatever we're doing, that we need to look at the streets too, so.
Mr. Counselor and Councilor Olivaria, Mr. Mayor, I share your sentiment completely. We haven't spent a dime on another vehicle for a director. My contract says that I'm supposed to have a car. I don't need a car. I don't want a car. I got an old car that works just fine, and so we'll watch that very carefully. We do have a number of vehicles. They're not always allocated to the right position. I'm trying to find a bigger truck to make a trade with somebody for the Parks Department, so they have a truck that's big enough to haul water, so that we can water some of the things that we need to water. But I think that I don't understand how money was allocated for these kinds of things in the past, but we'll be very careful about it in the future. We're going to have to make sure that there's a good justification for a vehicle.
Mr. Manager, and another thing that I see, that you have a large amount of unused vehicles that you have around the city, that they're just parked and taking space, and you're not doing anything with them, honestly, if you have something on your mind that you're going to go and get an auction, or selling them, or do something with them?
We are having an auction. The auction will be in September or October. We've already got a list of things to be auctioned. We've told the departments that if they have any vehicles or any piece of equipment, anything that they're not using, they should put it up for auction, because we have a storage problem. And so if we can get rid of some of the things we don't need, we're going to try to do that, so. And, but we're working on that. There's no point in just having something that's not useful and keeping it in the back here. We've got some porta potties that don't work, and getting the parts for them is just impossible. We're going to auction it off, see if somebody will take it. At least it won't be cluttering up the space.
Yeah, and I've noticed a lot of vehicles in the police parking, in the police department parking lot. I mean, a lot. There's probably 30 cars there.
Yeah, we'll have to work with the new chief of police on that
Okay.
question. I don't know what why that is. I do know that Chief Bibb came to see me and he said, can you help me find a place for some vehicle, because we don't have a place to park it safely. So it's a problem.
Yeah.
Mr. Mayor, if I may?
Yes, Tom.
Mr. Counselor, in reference to the bucket truck, that was previously ordered, and so we were basically obligated. We just couldn't pick it up because we wasn't insured, as Dr. Taylor mentioned. And so that was just a given that fell on us. But in reference to the vehicles and the auction, we've got a final listing if you'd like us to provide that for you already. We can definitely provide that for you, of
And I
all
think
vehicles and anything else that may be.
That's something we can present at a future meeting. We can show you where we're going with the auction, what our plans are.
And in the event of a public auction like that, does the money go back into a general fund? Or can it be earmarked for something?
I don't know how to answer that question.
I don't know either.
Okay.
I think that's the will of the council.
I think it's general fund, huh?
Yeah.
But even if it's to the general fund, you can earmark it for certain things.
For abatement of properties.
I think if it was bought with federal funds, if I remember correctly, it has to go just as, well, I mean, it depends with housing, I don't know if we would get it, but if it came from housing, it would have to stay within housing. So if it was the federal fund.
I got you.
Yeah, so with the transfer to housing, all the assets of housing goes with them.
Yeah. But just in general, it goes federal money.
Well, I was talking to the city manager this morning too. I think that even though we're turning housing back to the federal government or to the northeastern region, I think they're still obligated to try and fund some activities or some of our parks in the area, or I think they're tied into the community in that fashion. So I'll be checking with housing, see how that works, because I'm pretty sure that in every community that they have housing, they contribute to parks and or services for their people that rent there.
Good. It's a good idea. Thank you, Mike.
And Mr. Mayor, just to follow up on Councilor Olivares' point, we're transferring $365,000 to HUD every year for the next 10 years. I think that we should have that as a regular item where we discuss that with them, what they did with that money, how they're planning to use it, because is it going to buy 4 new houses? Is it going to go to improving some of the infrastructure in the area? How are they planning to use it? I think we should keep that in mind and have them on our agenda at least once or twice a year.
It's a good idea.
Because, number one, even if they would put it into the streets, because the streets belong to the city, the houses don't, but the city streets do, so even if they could put it towards that would be perfect, it'd be good, it's a good idea. And on that bucket truck, I think the company should be coming down here and doing the training here instead of us sending our employees down there. I mean, that's what we did at the state level. They'd send 2 people and give you a whole day's training for 8 guys at a time. So I don't know what kind of agreement they made during that time.
That's probably a good point, Councilor. I think we've already made agreement to do this, but I think when we go and purchase the other vehicle, that we could ask them to come up here and do the training.
So I will entertain.
I just had one more question.
Go ahead.
I know this is future. I know we didn't have Las Vegas Day at the legislature this year, but going to the budget, I see that we've only budgeted $1,000. Is there plans for that next year, or are we gonna?
I don't know. I was hoping to do something different. I was hoping to do some kind of not during the legislative session necessarily, but inviting elected leaders to Las Vegas and hosting them for a day and presenting our budgets and, invite people from all over the state, representatives, senators, to Las Vegas and let Pete and, what's his name?
No Castellano, or
Whoever it is, do the inviting, have them host it, celebrate Las Vegas a little bit, bring them around, give them a tour, give them dinner, have a dance, a fireworks display, or whatever we want to do for them and do that. But that's something that I was hoping to do. It's really, I've never really liked the idea of doing it during the legislative session, especially at the end, because it's really no use. I would really like to meet with them prior to the legislative session, like in December or January, and bring them to town and let them know that these are our projects that we really need help with, et cetera. Host them, give them a dinner, whatever, and, but that's something that we could think about as a team, but I think that would be more beneficial than to have just a party. That's all it is. You don't really have time to lobby anyone, and not all the legislators go, to that thing. And then the travel to Santa Fe and stuff. So I was thinking about, maybe something like that, doing it here.
Yeah, we did that in 2005, and actually, we did that tour at the United World College, remember?
Yeah.
And that year was very effective with our legislatures.
Yeah.
They came down, and we had lunch at the college itself, and they toured the college, and we toured Las Vegas, and we took them all in a bus.
Yeah.
And it turned out pretty good.
Yeah.
And they really enjoyed that. We gave them some pins and stuff like that. And because with this pandemic, I'm not sure if our citizens can go to Santa Fe. And I'm not so sure that that's more of a party than beneficial toward our bills.
Right.
But I guess in that same vein, there's nothing allocated for a lobbyist either, no, on this budget.
We did not budget for
Okay.
lobbyists.
So we'll have to do the lobbyists. And I like that idea, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman and Mr. Mayor, I think that that's a really important point. I used to work with the Legislative Finance Committee, and 95% of the budget was determined before the session started.
Right, exactly.
And and we always thought that the public really didn't understand that,
Yeah.
Thank you, Mayor. Just refreshing to hear you and the administration think that way, because I think in the past, that money is kind of, we've spent up to $50,000, and it's at the end of the session when we all know that money's pretty much allocated. Legislators already know where they're going to put their capital outlay money to. And, at the end of the session, they're even too busy because they're having late night sessions.
Sure.
So they don't even show up, and all it ends up being is a transfer of a party from here over there, and it's
Yeah.
kind of not, had we had one this year, as we all know, all the money got vetoed, so that would have been a waste of $50,000. So it's refreshing that, Councilor Montoya, yourself, we're all on the same page. Dr. Taylor, we're all on the same page on that, because, it can be more effective when you do it at a prior to the session, and you bring them in and you get more one-on-one time with the legislators, because during the session, they're too busy. They don't have the time to, even sometimes when you go and you sit with them, they give you 5-10 minutes, and it's not efficient. So,
And
so
Mr.
thank you
Mayor,
guys for.
Sure.
Councilor Romero, all of you, I think it would be really good to talk to, we don't know how the committees are going to, with the new Senate, how it's going to be, but, Senator Campos has been on the Senate Appropriations in the LFC for a long time. We need to have them come here to Las
Sure.
Vegas again, because that's a real opportunity to show them some of the needs that we have here.
I'd be willing to, and now we have such a great working relationship with Highlands and the United World College. The United World College is so excited to be working closely with us, and Dr. Mora is doing a fantastic job up there, and of course Dr. Minner. So this is a good time to talk about events like that, and bringing LFC here for a day, and even if we do a slideshow tour of the city or whatever, of all the state agencies and all that stuff. So let's keep that on the burner, absolutely.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
One last thing, I know, you know, as you went through campaign season, you know, some main priorities, here in Councilor Montoya, you know, we had code enforcement, the police issue, streets, and we know that, you know, based off of the budget the way it is, we really can't do too much there, but, you know, if things do, you know, kind of go a little better than what we're predicting, you know, is there a way that we could have maybe a mid-year budget review and maybe, you know, look to address a little of these, I'm sure you're gonna be on it anyway, but, you know, just as a council that we do have that, because we've never had that mid-year budget, you know, an actual dedicated mid-year budget review to it, you know, if things are better.
I think it'd be good to look at things in January or February.
Okay.
And, you know, we, in that budget, we do have another code enforcement position. It's unfunded, but, you know, we could look at where we are and what are the priorities with, if, you know, things are looking good, can we, because even this budget has $100,000 unspent.
Yeah.
And that's actually the perfect time, because that's the exact time when we should start preparing for the following year's budget.
Right.
So it's perfect timing.
Yeah, you start preparing
Yes,
for
sir.
June again.
Yes,
Yeah,
sir.
and, yeah, absolutely.
I think good.
Mr. Mayor, just one last thing again, thank you, Dominic, as the mayor said, thank you for, you know, stepping in, and I know you put some extra time and effort and gone above and beyond in the position that you've done, you know, I really appreciate that. I know it's probably been a lot of stress,
Oh, yeah.
you know, especially being that, you know, you're not going to be the finance guy, but, you know, you stepped up and you filled that role and did what you had to do for the benefit of the city, and so we thank you for that.
Appreciate it. Thank you, sir.
And I'd be remiss, like Dr. Taylor said, if we didn't recognize Mary Romero, because she worked late hours, she worked her weekends just to get us where we are today. So Mary, thank you so much, and we really appreciate all of Mary's hard work and effort too. So, what's the pleasure of the council?
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve resolution number 2046, fiscal year 2021 budget submitted to New Mexico DFA.
Thank you. I'll entertain a second. Second by Mr. Romero. Roll call, please.
Councilor Montoya?
Yes.
Councilor Romero?
Yes.
Councilor Olivari Junior?
Yes.
I have a motion by Councilor Montoya, a second by Councilor Romero. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Motion carries.
Thank you, Mayor, members of council.
Thank you, Dominic. Appreciate you very much.
Mayor, next item on the agenda is executive session. Is there a need for executive?
No. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Olivari,
make a motion to adjourn.
there's a motion by Mr. Olivari. I'll entertain a second.
Second, Mr. Mayor.
Second by Mr. Montoya.
Councilor Romero?
Yes.
Councilor Montoya?
Yes.
Councilor Olivari Junior?
Yes.
I have a motion by Councilor Olivari Junior, a second by Councilor Montoya. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Motion carries.
Thank you, and thank you for all your work, Cassandra. I appreciate you.